Welcome to a new episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Copper Connection podcast with me, your host as always, Chris Bailey. And if you're a plumbing student, apprentice, or just someone who's curious about how the water in your home actually works, you're in exactly the right place. Today we're diving into something that sounds a bit technical, but it's actually fascinating once you understand it. That's indirect cold water systems. And here's a question for you. Have you ever wondered why in some houses the kitchen tap feels different to the bathroom tap? Like the kitchen tap has better pressure and the water tastes fresher. Well, there's a reason for that. And by the end of this episode, you'll not only know why, but you'll be able to explain it to anyone who asks. This is the kind of knowledge that'll help you ace your plumbing or T-level assessment, impress on site, and honestly just make you feel like you really get how plumbing works. So grab a brew, get comfortable, and let's get into this week's episode. Alright, let's start with a story. Imagine it's the middle of winter, you're an apprentice and you get called out to a house where the water's stopped working. The homeowner is panicking, no water to the bathroom, no water to the toilet, nothing. But here's the weird part, the kitchen tap's still working perfectly. You head up to the loft and there it is, a frozen cistern, ice cold, literally. The water stored in that cistern feeds the whole house except the kitchen, which is connected directly to the mains. That's an indirect cold water system in action. Now, if you don't understand how these systems work, well, you're a little bit stuck. But if you do, you know exactly what's gone wrong, how to fix it, and more importantly, how to prevent it from happening again. That's the power of understanding indirect systems, and that's what we're going to be covering today. So, what exactly is an indirect cold water system? Here's the simple version. In an indirect system, water from the mains doesn't go straight to every tap in your house. Instead, it fills up a storage cistern, usually tucked away in the loft or roof space. That cistern then feeds most of the outlets in your home. For example, your bath, your basins and your toilet. But, and this is the key, the kitchen tap stays connected directly to the mains. Why? Well, because the kitchen tap is where you get your drinking water. That's what we call potable or wholesome water, safe, fresh and straight from the mains. You don't want to be drinking water that's been sitting in your system in your loft for days, right? That's why it's kept separate. Now, compare that to a direct system where every tap in the house is fed straight from the mains. No cistern, no storage. Just mains pressure everywhere. Sounds simpler, right? And it is, but an indirect system have their place, especially in older homes and larger properties. So why would anyone choose an indirect system if direct systems are simpler? Great question. Here's the thing. Indirect systems give you a reserve supply. If the mains water gets cut off for maintenance or emergency, you still got water stored in that system. You can flush the toilet, you can run a bath, you can wash your hands. That's a huge advantage, especially in larger homes or areas where mains interruptions are common. Also, indirect systems are quieter because the water is stored and fed by gravity. There's less strain on the pipes and fittings. You don't get that sudden rush of high pressure every time someone opens a tap. It's gentler on the system. And here's another one. Multiple outlets can run at the same time without a massive drop in flow. If someone's in the shower and someone else flushes the toilet, the system can handle it better than a direct system might. But, and there's always a but, indirect systems do have their downsides too. Let's be real, indirect systems aren't perfect. First off, pressure. Because the water is fed by gravity from a cistern in the loft, the pressure is low, really low. If you've ever had a shower that felt like a gentle drizzle rather than a proper rinse, that's probably why. The higher the cistern is above the outlet, the better the pressure. But even then, it's not great. 1 metre of high gives you around about 0.1 bar of pressure. That's not much. Second, we have hygiene. Water sitting in a system can become stagnant if it's not used regularly. And stagnant water, well, that's a breeding ground for bacteria, including Legionella. That's why cisterns need to be covered, insulated and maintained properly. You can't just install one and forget about it. And thirdly, we have space and cost. You need room for a cistern. Usually in the loft, you need more pipework, more components, more insulation. It's more expensive to install and more work to maintain. So indirect systems are a trade-off. They give you a reserve supply, quieter operation, but you sacrifice pressure and take on more maintenance responsibility. Let's talk about the components that make an indirect system work. If you're studying your plumbing or T-level or working on site, you need to know these inside out. First up, the cold water storage cistern. This is the heart of the system. It's usually a plastic cistern made with polyethylene, polypropylene sitting in a loft. It's got to be covered to keep out insects and debris, and insulated to protect freezing in the winter or warming in the summer. Inside the cistern, you've got a float operated valve, often called the ball valve. This controls the water level. When the cistern fills up, the float rises and shuts off the valve. Simple but essential. The most common type is a British standard 1212 Part 2 valve. Then you've got the overflow and warning pipe. If anything goes wrong, say the float valve fails, the overflow pipe safely discharges excess water outside of the building. The warning pipe alerts you to a problem before it comes a flood. For cisterns under 1,000 litres, you can use a combined overflow and warning pipe. Anything above that, then they need to be separate. You've also got stop valves, service valves, drain valves and isolation valves throughout the system. Each one has a specific job: controlling flow, isolating sections for maintenance, draining down the system when needed. And don't forget the pipework. The rising main fills the cistern, the cold pipes distribute water to the outlets. Everything needs to be properly sized, insulated and installed to building regulations. Now, here's where it gets serious. Indirect systems are governed by the Water Supply Water Fittings Regulation 1999 and Building Regulations Part G. They aren't suggestions, they're legal requirements. Cisterns made from approved materials, they must be covered and insulated. Float valves must prevent backflow. Overflow and warning pipes are mandatory. All components must be RAS approved. That's the Water Regulations Advisory Scheme. And hygiene, that's non-negotiable. Cisterns must be cleaned periodically. Pipes must be arranged to minimise stagnation. Dead legs, those unused pipe runs, need to be kept short and flushed regularly. If there's a significant risk, the system might need chlorination to kill the bacteria. This is why maintenance matters. A neglected system can become contaminated with insects, debris, even vermin. The water can develop a bad taste or odour. In extreme cases, it can become a health hazard. So if you're installing or maintaining an indirect system, you've got to take hygiene seriously. It's not just about passing an inspection, it's about keeping people safe. Let me give you a couple of real-world scenarios that will help this all click. Remember the one at the beginning of the episode where we said a homeowner called you because there was no water to the bathroom or the toilet, but the kitchen tap still worked? You headed up to the loft and you found the frozen cistern because it wasn't insulated properly. So to fix this, we'd need to thaw the cistern safely. Then we will need to insulate the cistern properly and insulate the pipes too. Prevention is better than cure. A family reports their water tastes funny and smells bad. You inspect the system and find it's missing lid. Insects, dust and debris has gotten in. That's water's contaminated. The fix, well, we'd need to clean and disinfect the cistern, fit a proper lid and educate the homeowner about maintenance. This is why regulations require systems to be covered. And then we've got a homeowner complaining that their top floor shower has terrible pressure. You check the system and find the cistern is only a metre above the shower. That's giving them about 0.1 bar pressure, barely a trickle. The fix, either raise the cistern if you can, or we'd have to consider installing a shower boost pump, or consider switching to mains fed system. Sometimes an indirect system just isn't the right fit. These scenarios show why understanding indirect systems matter. It's not just theory, it's practical, real-world problem solving. Alright, if you're studying for your plumbing or T-level or working as an apprentice, here's some top tips for mastering indirect cold water systems. Number 1, sketch it out. Draw the system from memory. Include the rising main, cistern, flow valve, overflow pipes and warning pipes, and all the outlets. Label everything. The more you draw it, the more it'll stick. Know your valves: stop valve, service valve, drain valve, gate valve, isolation valve. Know what each one looks like and what it does. This is all basic stuff, but it's essential. Understanding the regulations. I'm not going to ask you that you need to memorise every line, but you need to know the key requirements. System materials, covers, insulation, overflow pipes, backflow prevention. These come up in assessments and on-site too. Thinking about hygiene, ask yourself, how can this system become contaminated? How can I prevent that? This mindset will make you a better plumber in the long run. And compare systems. Don't just learn about indirect systems in isolation. Compare them to direct systems. When would you use one over the other? What are the trade-offs? This deeper understanding will set you apart from the crowd. Alright, let's wrap up this episode. Indirect cold water systems might seem complicated at first, but once you break them down, they make total sense. You've got a cistern in the loft feeding most of the house, with the kitchen tap staying on the mains for drinking water. You've got a reserve supply, a quieter operation, but you sacrifice pressure and take on more maintenance. The key is understanding the components, the regulations and hygiene concerns. If you can explain why the kitchen tap is different, why the cistern needs a warning pipe, and why installation matters, you're well on your way to mastering this topic. And remember, this isn't just about passing the exam, this is about becoming a skilled, confident tradesperson who can solve real problems for real people. So keep learning, keep practicing, and keep asking questions. That's how you'll grow. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you follow the Contamination podcast on Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from. We've got loads more episodes covering everything from direct systems to hot water cylinders to drainage and beyond. This is your go-to resource for plumbing knowledge, study tips and career advice. I'm Chris Bailey and I'll catch you on the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay motivated.
We'll be back next week. In the meantime, please subscribe and thanks for listening.